that I've done in the past, particularly with the urban explorers, has got me into a lot of trouble. I mean, I got arrested. All the people that I worked with ended up getting arrested because the police got my fucking note. And I mean, it was a terrible.
How'd the police know?
It was a terrible situation. Well, I was going out with these urban explorers into all of this subterranean infrastructure underneath London. And after we went into those sewer systems, then we got into electricity tunnels. Then we started getting into bunkers.
So how illegal is this stuff?
These are like layers under the city. So imagine there's like 5 layers under the city, right? So we go from those sewers to the electricity tunnels to the infrastructural systems to the bunker, and then we started getting into what are called deep level systems, right? And they're very similar to the bunkers that the U.S. government is building here that they call DUMS, deep underground military bases, right? We started getting into like serious critical infrastructure. Like at some point,
how easy was it to get into those?
It took us years. It was quite a lot of research. Wow. But I mean, at some point we got into what are called the BT deep level tunnels, British telecommunications deep level tunnels, and we were like inside the telecommunications trunk for all of the United Kingdom, And at this point, we're like 100 feet underground, 120 feet underground. We were walking through this tunnel about 100 feet underground, and one of the explorers I was with is like, there's a manhole above us. I was like, what do you mean manhole above us? We're in the deepest level right now. And we pop this manhole and a camera swivels, and stares at it. We're like, oh God, and then we realized we were into some critical shit. So
what was it?
It was just telecommunication hubs, right? It's just like the trunk of all of the infrastructure, fiber optics and phone lines.
And they just have an exposed manhole cover, a tunnel that you can get to.
Dude, we wiggled from tunnel to through tiny crevices. We were getting into like the deep underbelly of the city. I mean, it was not easy to get to. But here's the thing. At the same time, we had been cracking all of the abandoned tube stations, metro stations in London, right? So we took a map of the tube from 1932, and we set a map from 2008 on top of it, and what you see are a bunch of stations that are no longer on the map. That's your first clue. So there were like 40 some. Then we started doing research, and we figured out that there's got to be at least 14 stations that still have like ticket offices or platforms, or there's something there that you could find. So we started sneaking into the tube to go and find these places. Like we would wait till the train stopped at 2 a.m, and then we would like climb up a bridge and get onto the tracks, and we'd run through the tunnels, and we were finding these things one after another. Incredible time capsules, where there were artifacts left behind, posters, like we'd find tickets on the ground that
from
were 40 years old, I mean, really cool stuff. A lot of these stations were bombed out during World War II. But find this, like, again, this kind of like here's the archaeologist in me, right? Like, we were having this visceral connection to history. We were finding this stuff that was giving us like a real sense of being inside history in material terms. So we're posting every we crack one of these stations, we post it on our blogs. We're like, oh, we've cracked Mark Lane, we've cracked Down Street, we've cracked, and we're all excited about it, and like the window's narrowing, and we get towards the end of the 14 stations, and we're starting to think, like the cops are surely watching what we're doing, right? The British Transport Police, and kind of know where we're going to go because there's only a few stations left. So we stopped posting stuff. And on Christmas of 2012, we cracked the last station underneath the museum, which, like, there's all sorts of stories about, like, there was a ghost in here, it's a haunted station or whatever. But we did it. We never got caught. So for me, this is the end of the research project.
Is there a fear of being like retroactively prosecuted for this stuff?
We'll get So I'm done with my research project. I've written my PhD. I published my first book, Explore Everything, about all of our or I hadn't published the book yet. And I fly to Cambodia to work on a totally different research project, right? Like I'm switching gears. I'm going to go do something else. And I fly back from Cambodia via Singapore, and the plane lands at Heathrow. And, you know, the thing goes off, ding, and you stand up and you get your bags, and then happening. And they say, can everyone please sit down again? Down, I look out the plane, and there's cop cars everywhere. And I'm like, oh, shit. You know, I came from Singapore. Someone brought drugs. I don't know. There's a terror. Like, I have no idea what's going on. And the cops get on the plane, and they're like, 42K. Dr. Garrett? Yeah, you're coming with us. Okay. So they cuff me. They have me like retrieve my bag from the baggage claim, and they take me through passport control in handcuffs. And obviously the UK government's like, yeah, we'll keep that passport, thank you. So they eventually charge with conspiracy to commit criminal damage. Now, what's weird about England is that trespass isn't a criminal offense. So you can't charge people with trespass unless you're in very specific circumstances. So they tried out this charge of conspiracy to commit criminal damage because it's about intention. It's a thought crime. Like, if I text you and I'm like, hey, dude, you know, the bar is closed right now because of COVID. You want to break in and just like pour ourselves a beer? And you're like, yeah, let's do it. Like, we've committed conspiracy to commit criminal damage. Like, we've committed to the crime. So anyway, for years were dragged through the British legal system, and I got trapped in the UK for 3 years.
Whoa!
Well, they kept my passport, dude. I was trapped there. And here's where it gets really weird: is that when the plane landed at Singapore, there was a journalist from GQ who was supposed to meet us. We were going to take him into some of this subterranean infrastructure and show him all these spaces. And he's like, you know, by the time I got out of jail, like 48 hours later, I had all these messages from him. Asshole, I showed up at the airport and you weren't there and whatever, you know. And I finally find this guy, Matthew Power, and he's like, are you serious? Like, because we had timed it to land at the same time.
Yeah.
And he's like, you serious? You got arrested at that moment? And he said, what about your house? I said, I have no idea. So we go to my house and we unlock the door with these keys that the police had given me because they found my door with a battering ram. Ooh. Right? And then, you know, like, put some padlocks on there that they drilled into the door and the door frame. And I open it up and my apartment has just been ravaged, right? Like, stuff everywhere. The mattress is flipped over. All the cupboards are torn apart. There's like pieces of the door all over the floor. And underneath all of it, there was a job contract from the University of Oxford to do a postdoc because I just finished my PhD. And the journalist from GQ is like, dude, I can go home right now. I've got this story. I don't need to explore anything. I'm done.
And how did it resolve?
Well, by the time we got to court, I mean, the prosecution was just in shambles. I mean, it was a total debacle because there was no evidence that we had broken anything, you know.
Because of their laws, you trespass, which isn't the law.
We just trust, yeah. But they spent, you know, £300,000, I don't know, $400,000 of tax money to run this prosecution, so they were going to see it to the end. And essentially, you know, they confiscated my computers, my hard drives, my notebooks, and that was a central component of the evidence that was used to prosecute everyone. So essentially, like, I just made a deal with them. I'm like, look, I'll take a hit, you know, if everyone else can just get off, you know, I'll take the hit for it. So I pled guilty to I think it was 4 counts of criminal damage, which included damage to a screw forward that I had taken off and put back on to a vent shaft.
Ooh.
I know. Sliding open a window. Oh, that was in a bedding. So I'd opened a window for someone to crawl through. I mean, it was just like the ridiculous things, but they didn't care because they needed needed
a win.
They needed a win, you know. So I gave them that. But now I've got this criminal record in England.
So when you land, do you get pulled aside if you go to England?
I actually filed a complaint with the government, and they would like severely harass me. And then when I moved to Australia, I had the same problem. Like, they had put flags on my passport.
And you filed a complaint, and did it go through?
And I filed the flags off the passport, yeah.
Oh.
Essentially saying, like, you know, I did my thing, you know? Yeah, like, why do I have to keep paying for this over and over again?
So
but it was really funny when they originally gave me my passport back. So, like, I go to court, and then the judge is like, Dr. Garrett, you're very naughty, or whatever. You know, here, take your passport back.
Do they have wigs on?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Really?
Yeah.
They still do that?
Yeah, they still do that. Really good.
Wow, that's real.
Yeah. Yeah, the barristers have their wigs, and
Holy
they
shit.
carry them around like a cat, you know.
And then they have to put it on when they're
have to put
doing,
it on to do their
that's
formal
fucking
thing.
bonkers.
But so they give me my passport back, and the next day I was supposed to fly to Sydney and go speak at the Festival of Dangerous Ideas. I was the speaker, right? And I go to the airport, and the guy swipes it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you don't want to use this." I was like, what does it say? What does the screen say? And he said, I can't relay that, but you should probably go. And gives me my passport back, and then
You should probably leave the...
yeah, not get on a plane with this. Like, you're going to have a problem on the other side. You know, whatever he saw.
Well, how
on his
else can you...
screen. Well, exactly. So then I missed my flight, and I had to go back. I had to go to the U.S. Embassy, and I'm like, you know, I've just tried to fly with my passport, and it doesn't work. And the guy at the embassy swipes it, and he says, "Oh wow!" And then he gets out a hole puncher, and he goes thunk 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 right through my passport, and he says, "You shouldn't use that." And then like 3 hours later, they gave me another passport, and I flew out the next day.
And the
started getting stopped again, so they like I don't know, tacked the flags under.
God
I mean, it was a real
damn.
ordeal. But the thing. I mean, it was traumatic for me, of course. I was like stuck in a foreign country, and you know, like you get worried about your income. I was worried of they did try to deport me at some point, because once you have a criminal offense, they can
Right.
try and deport. So anyway, I beat that down.
Did they find you? Like, what was the ultimate judgment?
Yeah, I think it was £2,000, about $3,000. I got fined.
Not too bad.
It's not a big deal.
Sure, it's money off the book. If not, you're going to make some now.
You know, dude, I made all the money that I made on my first book, Explore Everything, went to my lawyers, who I have to say were phenomenal. Like, they did a great job. But it was every time I get a royalty check, I just sign it over to them, you know. And it did seem like karma. It was like, well, I
Yeah.
broke into all this shit, and then I wrote a book, and then the money went to the lawyers, and the lawyers got me off, and it all kind of worked out.
Writing about a movie, or you're writing about a guy like Tony Montana. How do you you walk this fine line of telling the story accurately, but actually making him likable in some strange way?
Well, he's not a hypocrite, you see. He tells the truth, as he
Right.
says, even when I lie. He's who's free unto himself, and I think that's what worked, because the people around him are so corrupt. I mean,
Yeah.
the cops are corrupt in Miami. The system, the bureaucracy that pressed down on. By the way, I mean, let's be honest. Let's talk about the drug war. I mean, this is an invention that's come about that's a disaster. It's
Yes.
a bureaucracy of enormous billions of dollars are being wasted on fighting drugs with this super DEA and now the ICE and all that, whatever they want. We always create wars. We call it war on drugs, war on poverty, war on this, war on that. That's the problem. We make too much of a bureaucracy. I noticed this in Vietnam. It bothered the shit out of me because we were sending 5 people, non-combat people, over there for every combat person. We had an infrastructure, Las Vegas of material. We had PXs. We had everything we wanted. They sent cars over there. A lot of this stuff was, sold on the black market in the end by master sergeants making a buck on the side. There was a lot of shit going on, crime stuff, and the Vietnamese were benefiting from it. They loved the Americans, of course. They loved us. It's the same thing, Afghanistan, Iran. It goes on and on and on. It's like we create these super bureaucracies around events. So what happened in the war on drugs is the same thing. And then I think that Pacino's a hero because, in a way, he sees it all. He sees it's all bullshit. And he calls it out. And I think a lot of people just picked up on it. They knew the war on drugs was a lie.
Yeah, well, most people today at least have a sense that it's not going well. I mean, back then they thought.
How many countries have we pissed off? How many countries have we told, "Hey, you got to do it this way. We're coming down there. We're going to bust you."
Speaking of Geraldo, did you ever see where Geraldo was in Afghanistan and he's walking through the poppy fields that are being protected by U.S. troops?
Yeah, sure.
And it's on Fox News, so he's trying to do this weird propaganda job of explaining why, in order to get these poppy farmers to give us information about the Taliban, we have to somehow or another protect their crops. So we've got American soldiers.
It's the story.
Well, then you found out that spectacular growth of heroin.
Yeah.
Like heroin, just heroin sales and heroin use worldwide went up in an amazing manner.
Yeah. This going on, by the way, in the 1980s when we were supporting the Mujahideen against the Russians.
Yeah.
That's when it started. They were fighting for the poppy fields.
Yeah.
We're talking about billions of dollars here.
Billions. Yeah, and it's not like
some of the dealers, we don't even know their names, but they're well known in the Pakistani, Afghani world.
yeah.
Some of them are unbelievably rich.
But it's so transparent. The poppy fields being guarded by U.S. troops and
That's a new one.
and them talking about it openly on Fox News and well, don't worry, folks, this is why they have to do this.
Ugh.
Like it's one of the weirdest parts of the war.
Yeah, as was Dan Rather doing his stand-up at the beginning of the war about how we're fighting the awful Russians. They got us going on that. You didn't see that clip.
When was that?
Early in the war.
Yeah.
He brought the flag to Afghanistan, making heroes out of them. Back then, the guys we supported, we gave the most money was to Hector Matir, who was a drug dealer. We gave him the most amount of aid. Hector Matir, he's like the killer warlord.
It's so strange. It's so strange how history repeats itself in different forms, just over and over and over again.
In Vietnam, in Laos, there was a whole poppy growth.
Yeah.
And the shipping, there was CIA shipping out. Air America, remember that movie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. There was I had a guy on who was in denial of this, and I showed him the CIA drug plane that crashed in Mexico with several tons of cocaine in it just a few years ago. I'm like, this is a plane that had been to Guantanamo Bay multiple times. Like, this is still going on. All that shit that happened with Barry Seals and...
Yeah, you're talking about Iran.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff's still going on.
That's an ugly story.
Yes.
Very ugly. Yeah, the Barry Seal movie was okay.
Oh, the Tom Cruise.
They got a piece of it.
Yeah.
But it was uglier than that.
Yeah.
I mean, we were basically... Reagan was selling arms to Iran, taking the cash and splitting it with the Contras.
Yeah.
The Contras were one of the most brutal groups, terrorist groups in Nicaragua. They were killing civilians, blowing up farms, scaring people, and we supported them. We supported a lot of bad guys everywhere.
It doesn't mean just because you don't like Trump as an individual that suddenly you're okay with hard left policies.
Right.
But I think the Democrats make that mistake.
They think that that's the solution to Trump. Go
Right.
as far away from him as possible.
Yeah, and then you can't find a center.
I think
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's the solution. I think the solution's somewhere in the center. And when you see shit like what's happening in Portland and Seattle, I think people are more aware than ever now that civil unrest is like it's very strange. It's very strange to watch them try to break into that. What was the building in Portland they were trying to break
The Hatfield house,
Yeah.
the federal courthouse.
into? That was insane.
Yeah.
Watching
Yeah.
that was insane. I don't understand the motivation. Like
there's-
connecting
yeah.
that to how do you connect that in Portland, the most liberal city in the country? How do you arguably, right? Probably the most liberal.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
most progressive.
Seattle,
it's
Portland.
right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
How do you connect that to Black Lives Matter? I mean, how do you connect that to George Floyd's death? How do you connect that to why? I just don't understand. Why would you try to break into the courthouse? They're trying to recreate what went wrong, what didn't work in Seattle. Right, that whole zone,
Chaz or
autonomous
Chop
zone.
or-
I mean, that was nonsense. It was crazy. You made a worse version of America in 6 blocks. It's like one of those little, tiny, like if you took like a glass dome and you put like little animals in there and you let them eat each other alive. Like
Yeah.
that was like we're gonna create utopia in glass. Like
Yeah.
they made a worse version of the United States. They put up borders immediately. They stopped people from coming in. They had armed guards. They wind up using police tag. They didn't have cops, but they have people that acted like cops and beat the fuck out of people for filming.
Right.
The whole thing was
Right.
madness. They,
No.
they had murders. It was
Well,
crazy. It was quick.
It's. I mean, look, Portland. I know Portland extremely well. My parents, lived in Portland for a couple of decades. It's
a beautiful place.
It used to be a hell of a place, but over the years, and I know Republicans and Democrats who feel the same way who are in Portland and the surrounding area, and they all feel like this place is slowly, circling down a toilet because of local and state management, right? And so. What happened in Portland? Not really a surprise. It's the same. The people that do this sort of activity, right? That have been referred to as Antifa or anarchists or whatever. They're the same sort of trustafarian, bottom-feeding folks in really any city in the world who engage in a WTO protest because it's cool to get out there and protest. I don't understand the mentality, but if you try to figure out a motivation for them, you'll lose your mind because they really don't have one. You could take 10 of those people out of Portland who are engaged in sort of the violent activity and ask them, well, why are you doing this? And you'll get 10 different answers, right?
Yeah.
They really don't have. It's not like that. And the sad part about it is they hijacked very legitimate protests over really serious, important questions about how do we improve policing around the country? How do we get to that point? And I'll tell you, the most disappointing part about it is after the tragedy with George Floyd, if the focus had been on, okay, here's what we have to do. We have to, seriously, not just lip service, we have to improve the policing to solve this particular issue. How do we do that? Well, there's certain logistical things you can do. You can improve your vetting and hiring of police candidates, right, of applicants for the job. You can do that. That's a protocol you can put in place. You can improve the training. That costs money, so defunding the police is kind of fucked. You can improve the training and make it continuous. It's not just a one-time thing. It's continuous training on how to respond to situations. It's like weapons training. If you don't keep doing it, if you're not always practicing, it just doesn't work, right? And then what can you do? You can also improve disciplinary action. Right? Those are concrete things that you can do. They're not easy, right? It's not as heavy a lift as deciding in the aftermath of the George Floyd tragedy that what we're really going to do is we're going to remove racism from the hearts and minds of people. This is not going to happen, right? To think it would, in theory, hey, great, get rid of racism. But what this should have been was a protest about doing things that actually will impact meaningfully people's lives. And it veered off because people wanted to feel self-righteous. It veered off into, well, you have to prove how pure you are. You have to remove racism, right? Now, I know black people that object to white people. I know white people that object to people not of their race. I know Hispanics that don't like people of non-Hispanics. Racism exists, sad to say, right? And all mankind. It's a human element of nature. Would you rather spin your wheels and act self-righteous and try to say, well, we're going to have this exercise where we remove racism from mankind? Or would you rather say, in the aftermath of this, let's do the things that can actually make a difference? And that's what we didn't do. And then legitimate protests over the anger and frustration about all this got further hijacked by, again, Antifa, anarchists, whatever you want to call it.
I think that's a big problem. Ben Shapiro and I had this conversation about the protests and this term where they are mostly peaceful protests. And he had a hilarious point. He said, O.J. Simpson had a mostly peaceful night the night he killed his wife. It was only 3 minutes of the entire day that wasn't peaceful. That is a fucking great point.
Yeah.
But it is true in the protest that most of those people want the world to be a better place.
Right.
The problem is the people that hijack that and are trying to light the federal buildings on fire and smash monuments. Particularly, they're going after Abraham Lincoln. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Right.
He's the guy that freed the fucking slaves. Like, what are we doing? Are we going to erase history? Yeah. I would have loved if Abraham Lincoln could have had a time machine and gone to 2020 and understood what we know now about systemic racism. However, he lived in the 1700s when he wrote with a fucking feather. Okay? Give the guy a break. The world was a weird place back then.
Well, and that's part of it is trying to judge people of the past by current morals or current understanding, current thinking is pretty absurd, right? It doesn't justify past bad actions, but you know what? This idea, that you're going to erase history or remove history or not learn from it going forward it discredits the ability of people to have rational thought, right? To understand and look at a context, look at something in context and say, okay, nowadays that's unacceptable. But okay, I get, why these things occurred. It's tragic or it's regrettable, whatever. But Yeah, I mean, look, in the UK, they were attacking the statue of Churchill.
Yeah.
I mean, holy fuck.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And
I mean, I think I said, say Lincoln 1700s. I meant 1800. Well, it was 1865, right?
Yeah.
But either way, the idea that this guy is supposed to be a perfect person back then, look, history is supposed to be about the things that happened, the people that made a difference, and how we got to where we are today. And Lincoln is a big part. The 1865, the Emancipation Proclamation, that's a big part of how we are who we are today. It's horrible that the early settlers brought over slaves from Africa. It's horrible that slaves still exist today. All these things are horrible. Yeah. They're horrible, but taking down statues of people that made a difference and made change. Look, if you want to take down statues of Confederate generals and stuff like that, there's a good argument there. It's a good argument that maybe we shouldn't have those, or maybe we should have them somewhere. You know, like the same place we have a statue of Genghis Khan.
Right.
Like maybe they shouldn't be. You know what I'm saying?
Is there a statue of Genghis Khan?
I'm sure there is.
Yeah, somewhere.
Somewhere in Mongolia, there's got to be, right? Look, I mean, Genghis Khan killed 10% of the fucking population while he was alive. But it doesn't mean there shouldn't be some recognition of this historical figure when you're talking about 2020.
Well, I think, and this doesn't, again, you can. The problem is nowadays, right? You've got sort of the righteous mob on the left and the righteous mob on the right, and the problem people make is they try to placate one side or the other, thinking somehow they're always going to they're going to be pure enough. You're never pure enough for the self-righteous mob, no matter where they are on the spectrum.
Right. They're always finding there's a new benchmark.
There's always that opportunity. But a lot of the Confederate statues out there were put up in an effort to, and this sounds weird, but in an effort to try to unify the country again, right? In the aftermath of the Civil War, and there was this element of saying, let's try to, and so you think, okay, that's
when were put up actually during the Civil Rights movement.
Right.
They were put up when they were thinking that people were getting too highfalutin and they wanted to celebrate.
That's absolutely true. Yeah.
Those are the really cheap ones too. It's true. They're really shittily made because they made them real quick.
But I mean, so the point being is, I agree. If you want to take those down, well, sure, yeah. I mean, why would you have a statue of some Confederate leader? Fine, take it out, take it off the streets. That makes, I get that, right? That and if that helps people feel terrific, put it in a museum or whatever you're going to do with it.
But George Washington,
I know exactly. Abraham Lincoln
down Confederate statues. Trump once said, "What's next? You're going to take down George Washington?" And everyone was laughing like they're not going to do that, but yet they are going to do that now.
Yeah, and two things again, as always, can be true at the same time. Somebody could be, doing some things you disagree with. They could have also done something that helped move the country forward, did something that had extreme positive effects.
Well, that's the Genghis Khan argument, They opened up trade with China. In the process of killing 10 million people, he opened up trade with the East.
Was he a free? I didn't know that.
Yeah, sure.
He's a free trade guy.
Free trade / raper.
What's your first name?
Murderer.
Yeah.
He killed so many people, they changed the carbon footprint of the Earth.
Yeah.
Like the New York Times had this crazy article about it. Like he literally killed 10% of the people on Earth. But
he was an angry man.
Look, it's awful that we have history that's filled with terrible acts and deeds. But I don't think that removing statues of people who tried to make a difference, within the context of their time, with Lincoln 1865, with George Washington 1700s. I mean, this is you're talking about people that when they were doing this, they were the best example of humanity that you could find. They were the best example of what we had. I mean, when George Washington was the first president of the United States, I mean, you want to talk about a fucking radical undertaking, this crazy experiment in self-government while they escaped from the grasp of Europe. I mean, it's really nuts.
Yeah, and again, I think there's an element here that we missed the boat maybe again, right? We've gone through these. It's not like we haven't had protests before, Black Lives Matter protests and over the same issues of police brutality and all that. But it all falls into that same bucket from my perspective that we don't do the hard things, right? The hard things would have been to say from a local, state, and federal position, let's enact these different protocols that can improve policing. Let's do those things that we need to do. That's a heavy lift in a way. The easier things are, let's tear down a statue, right? Or find a way to make us feel better about ourselves without necessarily having to. And it's like this shell game, I think, that politicians sometimes play, right? And you saw it in Portland where, okay, let's just placate this for a while. It'll make everybody feel better, and then the protests will die down.
Well,
Right?
Seattle's the best, right? When the mayor came out and said she called it, maybe it's the summer of love.
Yeah. 67, the summer of love.
Have they totally squashed that now? Is that whole place brought back to the original business owner?
I don't know is the answer to that question. I do know that they've been looking at how do we do community-based policing? How do we defund the police and yet still have something that resembles a response to the citizens' need for security? I don't know what any of all that dribble means.
Yeah,
if you want to improve the policing, it's an investment, right? It's not defunding. But again,
Exactly.
defunding and saying that's what I'm for, it's a
Political
easy
move.
fucking way, right, to feel good and to placate people, and then you don't do shit, and then 5 years from now we have another incident because you didn't actually do the things that make policing better.
Well, you get where you New York City. It gets even worse for the citizens because now the police don't have any faith at all in the government. They're not respected. They're not appreciated. And you're seeing this giant uptick in crime because their presence isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really crazy, man. It's like a movie. I've never thought, if you went back to March when we shut down, I never thought I would be sitting here with you at the end of July, early August here, and we would be talking about this. I would have never thought that this would have taken place, that we would have legitimate civil unrest in this country, people getting shot in the streets in protests. I know that there's a real concern in a lot of these cities that someone's going to try to recreate what happened in Seattle, recreate what happened in Portland, and they're worried about it. The thing about it is it seems so organized. It really does. It doesn't seem that haphazard. It seems organized. How do these things get started? Like, how do you get something as big as these Portland riots?
Well, it's a really good question, and sometimes what you see is what appears to be a grassroots movement or grassroots activity happening, just kind of swelling up from a couple of neighborhoods. Yes, there was an element of that, but you also see, like if you're talking about, talking about activist environmental groups as an example, you'll also see some commonality between some of these groups. You'll see commonality in communications advice, in financing, in legal assistance and support from national groups, right? And yet it's in their agenda. It's to their advantage to make it appear as if it's a grassroots movement. So that all stays in the background. I'd argue that, some of this, and again, not to disappear down some rabbit hole where it's a George Soros-funded thing.
That's where I was going.
Yeah, but I mean, are there some elements that help with communication support or transportation assistance or legal advice or whatever it may be? Absolutely. These things, they very rarely is there an actual, genuine, organic grassroots movement that has no outside organizational support.
That's this heinous and this big.
Yeah. So, and again,
We're putting our tinfoil hats on.
Right?
But if anybody can put that on, you can put them on.
I left it in the car, but I'll go get it.
You on the inside, working for the CIA, you know how it works.
Well, we rarely organized things like this.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you guys did it. I'm saying you understand how these people operate.
Right. Yeah, no,
in a way that someone like me doesn't.
And so, again, look, we've talked about this in the past. I'm not necessarily a conspiracy theorist, but sometimes, you got to follow the threads that you can pull on, and sometimes it takes you down an interesting path, and you think, okay, maybe there is something to this.
I wouldn't say you're a conspiracy, but I would say you're open to the possibility of conspiracy. Like when you and I talked about the Martin Luther King assassination, and you took a big pause and you said that one does not make sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. I still feel that way.
Yeah. That one is filled with holes.
Yeah.
And I agree as well. I looked into it much more after you and I talked, and it's
very the way that you sometimes can get actually further into it without kind of disappearing down some of these, peripheral side stories and issues is money, right? Look for funding. Look for issues of where did money go, because that sometimes will take you down a more legitimate path, right? A lot of times investigations get built on very shaky ground because you start with a theory or whatever, and you're never starting on firm ground. sometimes when you follow the money, it keeps you a little more grounded.
Right.
So, yeah.
Follow. Well, that's the
money.
thing with this. It's like, where is the money coming from? Like, where is the money coming from that organizes and helps these people get out of jail and all that jazz?
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's certain things that. Let's go back to Portland for a minute.
Okay.
One of the problems is I think the media, journalism in general, isn't anywhere near as curious or concerned with investigation as it used to be. Right? It's easier now to just say, this is where I'm at. I'm subjective. Of course, I'm subjective. And so here I go. Here's my. There's the idea of objectivity in journalism is pretty much out the window. With Portland, early on, for instance, they published mugshots and names of, I think there were maybe a dozen of the individuals who were arrested for violent activity. Right, violent activity. Now, a curious journalist, you would have thought, would have said, let's do some research. Let's look at all these people and let's look at their backgrounds. It's already public information. They've already posted it. Let's dig into this and find out, who are these people? Are there any linkages? Are there any commonalities between all these individuals? Can we find something that's interesting there? Maybe we won't, but let's do some investigation, right?
Right.
You'd like to think that's what journalism used to be, and maybe, but it doesn't seem like it is anymore. But that doesn't happen.
I think there's a problem, and one of the problems. Most journalists are left-wing. There's a giant number. I don't know what the percentage of it is, but if you want to go with whether it's Newsweek or CNN or the New York Times or Washington Post, or many, 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 many of these papers and organizations lean left. There's a dirty secret. The dirty secret is Antifa acts as the thug enforcers of the left. The people that do things like this, whether you approve of violence or disapprove of violence, what they're doing is they act as the people doing the dirty work that many people on the left think has to be done in order to enact real change. Mm-hmm. Now, if you had the same thing in the right, imagine, my friend Tim Dillon said this, imagine if the Proud Boys were lighting Portland on fire.
Right.
Can you imagine if we had a Democratic president and the Proud Boys were trying to break into the courthouse and light Portland on fire? People would go fucking crazy.
Yeah.
It would be terrifying if it was a different political ideology but the same exact actions. So because these actions are done with the correct political ideology, under the guise of, racial justice, under the guise of reforming our government, so then everybody's okay with people literally burning books. They're throwing books on a pile. I mean,
that's a Bible. So go ahead. You can do
it's
that.
fucking crazy. They're burning Bibles. Like, what does the Bible have to do with it? The Bible gives a lot of people comfort, whether you believe in it or not. You're throwing stacks of Bibles and then you're lighting them on fire in front of a courthouse?
Well, what if they'd been the Quran?
Right. Good. Very good. Very good example.
We'll be losing our minds. But Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi came out and said, well, people are going to do what they're going to do. Really, Nancy? Really?
Well, she's an odd duck, that lady.